Paris is a space that a lot of people consider to be one of the artistic capitals of the world. Paris has always had a really deep and rich history with art, so it makes sense why our character, Jerry Mulligan, would flock here. Wealthy people, especially portrayed in this time period and in this geographical area, felt the need to be well-rounded. You need to have hobbies that you were good at, hobbies that were interesting, but still elegant. So one of these hobbies that a lot of these people chose to partake in was art. Rich people like art. It makes sense why our poor artist Jerry Mulligan is coming to Paris. Jerry, who is played by Gene Kelly, is doing okay. He lives modestly. He isn't very frivolous in his spending. He makes enough money to get himself by living in Paris. But what he really desires is making a name for himself within the art community. He continues to just scrape by until he meets Milo Roberts, who's played by Nina Foch. She's an American heiress and also an art patron. Milo offers Jerry her financial support along with art promotion in exchange for his company. This interaction between an heiress and a poor working man really highlights how deep income disparity really is. To Jerry, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to make a name for himself and be able to have some financial freedom. If he refuses her offer, then this could break his entire career that he's been dreaming of having. But for Miss Roberts, if this fails with him, then she could easily find somebody else who's willing to take her money. Their interactions really give us a viewpoint into how wealth shapes opportunity, both for the people who are wealthy and those who are receiving part of the wealth. For a struggling artist like Jerry, this is huge. Financial backing for artists almost guarantees their success. And I find this to be true today, whether it be physical art like paintings, drawings, or even music, dance, theater. If you are backed financially, then you have access to a lot more opportunities, whether it be more time to actually work on what you're making, being able to quit your job and having a full focus on what you create, and especially like in this case, promotion. Applying historical context, it's pretty widely known that the 1950s were a pretty conservative time. Women were still largely viewed as subordinate to men. The 1950s was one of the last decades globally to acceptingly house anti-women beliefs. In the 1950s, post-World War II, families were starting to come back together. When men came back from the war, they restarted their families or created different ones entirely. Women who lost their men in the war remarried and had more children. They capitalized on this need for family. And even though the gender construct of women stay at home and tend to the children in the home and men go to work was pretty prevalent, this is where it was truly embraced. A lot of 1950s gender norms are making a comeback in today's society also, especially on the internet and the rise of conservatism. A lot of women are taking pride in their homes and staying home and tending to children while their husband is the sole breadwinner. A lot of these women like to post content online about their lifestyle like a lot of people do nowadays. And I find there to be an intersection between these post-World War II gender norms and today's gender norms. While we as a society definitely made some significant leaps and bounds in the terms of breaking the gender norms and living to your own standard, I personally find this rise of a lack of financial freedom for women concerning, but I digress. So with this historical context, Milo is not part of the norm. Not only is she an heiress, but she is outspoken, she's bold, and she's sexual. She displayed a lot of characteristics that were mostly found in men. Because of Milo's behavior and her personality, she is having a lot of trouble having a relationship with a man. Especially in this time period, men were looking for a submissive woman. A woman who knew when to be quiet, a woman who acted hyper-feminine, but Milo was none of these things. I find it interesting that when women show predominantly male characteristics, they are almost shunned from society, and especially from the men in society. So it only makes sense why Milo is asking Jerry for a relationship in exchange for money. Another important character in this film is Lise Bouvier. She is an ideal woman. She's posh, she's femme, she's quiet, she's reserved. Lise was rewarded by her behavior, her submissiveness, her image being the ideal woman for the time. In contrast, Milo was punished for her personality, how she portrayed herself, that she was a masculine woman. What I mean by being rewarded is Lise has a fiance. If you are an unmarried woman, especially as you get older, and especially during these times, you are seen as undesirable. And I also find that to be prevalent today. Jerry Mulligan has a friend named Adam Cook, who is also an artist looking to make it big in Paris. Both of our characters are looking for an artistic outlet in this artistic city. They are considered to be expatriates, or expats for short. An expatriate is an American who resides out of the US, just like our characters Jerry and Adam. But expatriatism is especially for people who look for work outside of the US, and oftentimes for artists. Jerry and Adam dominate the narrative of the film. This allows us as the audience to see into their lens of an American standpoint. Despite being set in France, An American in Paris really embodies that American viewpoint. It seems like Adam and Jerry's American idealism has truly bled into Parisian society. You can see a sort of cultural imperialism. Romantic ideals and social obligation of this time really clashed in this film. Lise is the ideal woman of the time who is engaged to Henry, a man who protected her during the war. She feels she's obligated to marry him because he saved her life. While at one of Milo's events, Jerry spots Lise. He immediately falls in love with her. Later on in the film, Henry and Jerry are having a conversation. They're both talking about a woman that they love, unknowing to each other that they're talking about the same woman, Lise. Later on in the film, during a discussion with Jerry and Lise, she explains to Jerry how she's engaged to Henry and they plan to move to America after their wedding. Although Lise is engaged, she still falls in love with Jerry. This is where traditional loyalty and personal fulfillment really collide. Lise is burdened by knowing that she loves Jerry, but also feeling morally obligated to Henry. I think as a society today, we have drifted further from traditional loyalty in relationships, especially romantic ones. There's a lot more flexibility and fluidity within romantic and sexual relationships. I think this development generally as a society has benefited us as people. There's definitely less pressure to settle down with the first person you meet, but especially prevalent in today's society are casual relationships. This is definitely something that contrasts with this 1950s ideal. In contrast, in today's society, people act and live in relationships the way they see fit. So within the realm of the 1950s, which is highly rooted in tradition, Lise has a big decision to make. If she would rather stay with the man who saved her life out of moral obligation, or call off the engagement and start a relationship with Jerry. To the viewer, it might seem like an obvious answer on what she should choose. Follow your true love. But we also have to take into consideration the historical context yet again. It's 1951, post-World War II, an emphasis on the nuclear family, an emphasis on rebuilding after the war, and keeping relationships together after the war. And who better to rebuild her life with than the man that saved her life? But Lise, although being the ideal woman figure in our film, goes against tradition. Just like Milo, she too in her own way is bending norms. Lisa's struggle represents broader post-war tensions than just relationship, between rebuilding with duty and pursuing her own individualist ideals. This also ties into how the narrative is very much American, stepping out of line, pursuing what you feel is right, and so on and so forth. During the film's climax, there is a 17-minute ballet. At its core, it really represents American imperialism on different cultures. This ballet is a metaphor for Jerry's view of Paris. Paris to Jerry, and possibly other expats, is simply just a canvas, or maybe even a stepping stone for his success. It's ballet, it's highly visual, and almost dreamlike. Paris during this number sort of becomes an idealistic version of Paris. I find that it's only natural for different societies and different cultures to want to experience and embrace other societies and cultures. It seems like throughout this film, Jerry hasn't just adopted the Parisian culture, but molded it into his own fantasy. He's a struggling American artist who moves to Paris, one of the artistic capitals of the world. He meets a beautiful woman while also receiving financial backing and promotion for his career, his dream career, the career he came to Paris for. It's a typical American dream story hosted outside of America. America has a very dominant culture in our world, especially mid-century America. When American culture interacts with a different culture, it seems to reshape into an idealistic American viewpoint. So when such a dominant and embraced culture interacts with another one, for instance, in this metaphor with Jerry and Paris, it becomes something that it was not before. I think that this film was highly reflective of this period of post-war society. I think this is a really important piece of media for people of today to understand. While I find it to be highly exaggerated within the terms of literal representation of the time, I think that's the beauty of it. It's easier to digest. The music numbers are fun and dive deeper into the story between our characters and society. The ideal woman versus the non-ideal woman, the rich man versus the poor man, opportunity and how it ties into wealth, how a wartime mindset affects a person after a war. Doing a deep dive into An American in Paris through a sociological standpoint really reflects how entertainment shapes our world. Thank you for listening to my analysis about An American in Paris through a sociological lens. My name's Nat Kobas, and I hope you enjoyed.